Hello and welcome to the Big Nose podcast. This week on the show, I have a very special guest joining me to chat all things hospitality in these COVID times. Fernanda Machado, aka the Girl in Hospitality, as you'll find her on Instagram, will feature as my special guest on this week's podcast. So stay tuned for all those insights that she offers a little later on. Returning to the week that was, there was only one thing that was ever going to dominate the headlines, outside of a Trump assassination or a COVID-19 cure. It was, of course, Paschal Donohoe and Michael McGrath's budget for 2021. Now, in terms of the budget, it was a very expansive budget. A budget that offered lots and lots of cash to businesses, people, everyone. I think what I heard in the news headlines was it was the biggest spending budget ever in the history of the state. And you would think, going into what we would all accept to be a time of high uncertainty, a time when we're looking already at a downturn in the economy, that we would be look at probably saving money. But, you know, when money is so cheap at the moment, and considering that it's a case of will they press the delete button when all these bills are racked up, because it's not just a case that Ireland are racking up these bills. The whole of the European Union are making up money, and they're just pouring it out there to sustain business through a time where we don't know when the end is in sight. So Paschal Donohoe came out with Michael McGrath, and they stood there with their folders sprung and big smiley faces on the steps of the Department of Finance, and they were posing for cameras. But I think getting down into the nitty gritty of what was in that budget, for a lot of people, I think there was probably two large takeaways from it. The green tinge on the budget also was obvious, and that kind of made itself aware in the carbon tax hikes. Motorists immediately from midnight, when the budget came in, would see an increase in the cost of diesel, petrol across the board. So there was quite a lot of people going up and queuing for petrol on Tuesday, I think it was, the budget. They also increased the tax, the carbon tax on household fuels, but that won't come in till May 1st next year. So it was kind of, we'll get through this winter and see how it lies. But I think going forward, we're going to be dealing with tax hikes on all carbon stuff, which is right, I suppose, in a sense. You know, you expect some sort of green tinge on a budget when the Greens are in power with the two larger parties, but to offset this as well, there was an increase equally in the fuel allowance. I think it increased by about €3.50 to around about €28 a week. But there was mixed opinion, I think, from listening to a lot of the vox pops that were carried out for radio stations and news stations across the week. People were accepting that something has to be done about the environment and you know, how we tackle and how we consume fossil fuels and energy as a wider thing. But there was also people saying, is this the right time? When a lot of people are unemployed, there's 15% of the working population out of work. You know, there's a lot of uncertainty. Do we need to have an impact on a lot of the people who are using their own transport now to get in and out of work, because we're being incentivized not to travel on public transport? A lot of those people who are going to work are frontline workers. And why are they being immediately impacted by such tax hikes? But overall, I think it was an acceptance that the government had to do something in terms of reaching its targets, in terms of what's laid out in terms of law that they need to achieve. And the carbon tax hike was something that was always going to come, whether it was going to come now or come in a couple of years' time. It was something that we have to accept that's going to be there, and it's going to get worse as the years go by, and it's going to get higher. Hopefully they ring fence the money that they get from this to put into good energy programs that will make fuel cheaper and make it more accessible to the wider market. Because I know from my own experience that if you want to go retrofit in your house, or you want to go and buy a brand new car, the cost of these cars are huge, and if they were subsidised to a larger extent by the government, it would make them more attainable to a lot of more people. So that was kind of the one of the main two takeaways I had from the budget. I think another large thing that was broadly welcomed from a lot of people in the hospitality and tourism sector was the VAT reduction again. I know there was a lot of kick up of fuss about it when it came back in 2000, and I think it came back in 2019. It went from 9% to back up to 13.5%. So now there is a 50% saving, more or less, in terms of the tax rate. It's going down by 4.5% in real terms. What I hope this will do is, in terms of the medium to long term, it will incentivize people to stay at home, shop locally in terms of staying in your county, but also I hope that the industry takes the reduction in cost in terms of the VAT and not pass that on to um, us as a customer. You don't want to be going into try and support local businesses, B&Bs, hotels, or whatever hospitality section, and seeing the prices haven't come down. Now, I appreciate that there's been a huge loss in income over the last number of months, but you need to look at a plan for 2021. How are you going to price yourself? What is likely to be your target market? What's likely to be your footfall? And how are you best going to price the largest amount of people to be able to come in your door and get them to spend the money that hopefully will be there? So yeah, that was a large takeaway as well for the tourism and hospitality sector, the reduction. What I would say is I hope that stays there long term. I hope it's not just a quick fix and a nod to the hospitality and tourism sector, that here we go, for the next 18 months you'll have a 9% rate, but you'll actually go back up then further, and hopefully it won't go above 13.5% if they do increase it. I think it's a rate that is fair, but I think also that businesses have to reflect that in their prices. There was, as I said at the start, there was a lot of money given away in this budget. There was 10 billion set aside for capital programs such as roads, rail, bus, and obviously the Metro North was mentioned in that as well. Whether we'll see these come to fruition, who knows? If the money is there, the Metro North would be a great incentive. It will bring a lot of jobs. It would create a lot of infrastructure for Dublin, and a time where a lot of the government needs to be spending money so that it maintains the economy. This 10 billion is very much welcome. I know that they're investing again the green tinge. They're investing in more electrical rail carriages and what have you, and there's a fund set aside for the improvement of the Dart. So from a Dublin centric point of view, it was very positive in terms of that. There was going to be a large recruitment drive in line with this budget. There's an extra 600 plus guards going to be recruited. There's the guards did very well out of this. They have a budget now of nearly 8 million to spend on new vehicles. I know that we were releasing a lot of additional vehicles from rented car companies in the last 7 months, and now they're going to go out and look at sourcing their own vehicles. 300 new primary teacher roles to be created, and 1,000 plus SNA roles, which is is it going to mean that when we do come out of lockdown that coppers queues may be a bit longer than they were previously. There's a lot of guards coming on board, there's a lot of teachers coming on board, and where do they meet? They met in coppers. So yeah, it's looking to there. We're looking to the future. We're trying to stay positive. So yeah, there's a lot of investment in public sector jobs. There will be just looking back in terms of the special guest I had last week, Com Gavin, and the live entertainment sector. They got 50 million of a support fund from this, and they're splashing the cash to government here, there, and everywhere. And it's a real great welcome. This will really help sustain the industry in the short term. But when you break it down, I think per person working in the industry, it doesn't work out as that much, but it's something that is definitely welcome. I've seen that they extended the tax break for trying to get companies into Ireland in terms of creating jobs and recording stuff here, like we saw what happened with Star Wars going to Skellig Michael. That's been extended to 2023, so that's an extra 2 years on the tax relief to bring people into this country. So I think reading through the budget, and reflecting on the budget, no one's going to come out a millionaire. No one's going to come out with a huge amount of money extra, but there's a lot of extra cash out there. In fairness to Pascal and to Michael, they came on board, they came out and they answered a lot of questions. I know there was a very funny skit on Claire Byrne, a very funny segment on Claire Byrne about a guy in a Toyota Corolla car from 1999, and he made some very valid points about the the tax on the cars and the tax on the petrol for the cars, and the ability not to actually get funds together to go out and buy a brand new car. And it was very interesting. He made some very valid points. But my opinion is that this budget is something that is a stopgap to hopefully see us through the next 12 months, see how we are in 12 months' time, see what our finances are like, see what the world and the global finances are like, because it is my opinion that as part of the European Union, every European country at the moment is splashing the cash, money that actually doesn't exist in real terms. And I hope, and it is my opinion, that the central bank will come back at some stage when this is all over and assess the finances of a country, and basically as time goes by and as the economy recovers and as growth develops, that this money that we owe, in inverted commas, gets whittled down in terms of being deleted. It's just a financial accounting exercise. Realistically, we will always be in debt as a country. It's just what level of debt we actually hold on to. But looking at the budget, fairly positive. A lot of cash, but not a lot of detail. We'll see how it comes over the next 6 months in terms of its implementation, and see what happens from there. Now, going from one good news story in terms of the budget, I suppose, and as if 2020 wasn't bad enough, reports began to surface, if you pardon the pun, of the lack of fungi activity in Dingle Harbour. Now, for those who don't know fungi or don't know the legend, I don't know if I'm offending people by saying the legend of fungi. Fungi is a bottlenose dolphin that resides in Dingle Harbour, or in and around the Dingle Harbour area, and first was seen back in the early 80s down in Dingle by fishermen. I think it was in the maybe 83, 84, and he's a regular bottlenose dolphin. And in advance of doing this podcast, I knew a little bit about fungi, but I didn't know a huge amount about dolphins. So fungi is, as I said, a bottlenose dolphin, a very common kind of dolphin you'll see. The lifespan of a bottlenose dolphin, this is I'm no David Attenborough, okay, but from my research and a little bit of light reading on the lifespan of a bottlenose dolphin, they generally live between 8 and 17 years in the wild. Now, doing the calculations, 8 to 17 years would say that fungi is quite an old dolphin, as dolphins go. I think there is one record of a dolphin being known to have survived 67 years. So fungi is looking down that record at the moment, But anyway, getting back to the stories, basically, as a lot of stories break these days, the Fungi Forever a Facebook page broke that they had lost their best friend, and fishermen had not seen fungi in 2 days. Now, I think this was towards the start of the week, and reports came in, I think from Monday, that fungi hadn't been in 2 days, and it was quite unusual according to local anecdotes that we were getting, that fungi is generally seen every day, if not a few times a day. He comes in, he's around for about 5 or 6 hours, and fungi is renowned for being a very social butterfly or dolphin, as he is, and he hadn't been seen for 2 days, which is quite unusual. And then a lot of people came on, that the harbour master was in, different fishermen were commenting on the fact that it was very unusual for him to go missing for this period of time. Some people had said that he had done it previously, he had gone away for 2 or 3 days, and it had then surfaced, I think on Wednesday, that he had been spotted in Dingle Harbour. Now, we obviously are on lockdown generally in terms of a nation, and Dingle will be very, I don't know if a lot of the listeners will know this, but Dingle is a small town in West Kerry, Cork, I should know that, south of Ireland. I'm joking. Is a small town, and it's a coastal town, and it's a very beautiful town. I've been to it myself, and it is a very tourist town. And obviously, with no tourists being around, as in international tourists, there is a lack of people that he can bump into, or who are going out to see him on the any number of boat trips you can get out to see where he lives and where he's active, and this brings a lot of money into the town of Dingle, and the fact that they haven't been there. People were saying that he was feeling quite lonely and he was going off and doing unusual things, and then he came back, and then I think on Wednesday or Thursday he was spotted again. But on Friday it was then muted again that Fungi had gone missing again, and then maybe kind of, how would you best put this? Controversially, people were suggesting, well, maybe Fungi isn't just the one dolphin. Maybe he's a number of dolphins. And in my perspective, looking at the facts as they lie, and from what I've read up on bottlenose dolphins, yes, they live between the ages of 8 and 17, and yes, there has been a recorded age of 67 and one, but maybe Fungi is to Dingle what the Loch Ness monster is to Scotland. It's a case of it's a great marketing tool to attract people to the town, and I am totally all for this. I think the Loch Ness monster, the fact that it's alive or existent in a lake in Scotland, is something that is a fairy tale story, and if it brings people to the country or the area, and it gets them spending money, and it gets the economy moving, and it gives people in jobs, there's nothing wrong with it. It's the same what Walt Disney does and all of his theme parks around the world. It's the same idea. It's creating something, an attraction and a sense of mystery around it. And the fact that Fungi is gone missing, and the fact that it makes national headlines, is a testament to how well held Fungi as an idea is in the Dingle psyche, and the national psyche, because it was on national airwaves. So I hope that Fungi remains alive and well, and I hope that people are getting out to see him as best they can, and the fishermen going out to work are giving him a nod and keeping an eye on him, because whether it's one dolphin, two dolphins, or half a dozen dolphins, Fungi as an entity to Dingle is as important as the Loch Ness monster is to Scotland. It drives people's awareness of the area. It's an affiliation, and it's something that is very much keeping people in jobs, keeping an industry going, and it's a sense of attraction. So I hope Fungi is alive. I hope he is well, and I hope to get down to see him when all these lockdowns and restrictions are lifted. Now, I suppose from Fungi to the next topic, I suppose, and the last topic I'll mention before we go and look at the conversation I had with the girl in hospitality. The Big Nose podcast wouldn't be what it is if it didn't mention NPHET and the COVID-19 restrictions. This week will be no different. With Micheál Martin away, I suppose NPHET will play, and in a letter to the government on Friday, I believe, they once again suggested to the government that we were to move on a national basis to level 5. It's suggested in the letter. It stated in the letter that the country, due to the recent increases in everything, and in terms of cases, admissions to hospital and ICU admissions, that we move to a level 5 lockdown for 6 weeks, in an effort to suppress and flatten the curve. Now, I think this is what we're missing. This analogy, we got all behind the phrase "flatten the curve" back in March and April, and we as a nation came together. And we basically did what we were told, and it worked. The Taoiseach was in Brussels on Friday, and this letter was written on Thursday. I think it leaked out Thursday night and was submitted to the government on Friday. Now, at the time of this recording on a Sunday, the government did meet. Senior cabinet ministers met yesterday, and in attendance at that meeting was the CMO, Dr. Tony Holohan, there was Ronan Glynn, Paul Reid, and then you had some senior members of the cabinet. You had, obviously, the Taoiseach was back then from Brussels, Micheál Martin, you had the Taoiseach, Leo Varadkar, and I think Pascal Donoghue and Michael McGrath were also in attendance. There was a media frenzy outside Leinster House on Saturday. I think the meeting was scheduled for 3 o'clock. Everybody was arriving in cars. Um, some were arriving on bicycles. Eamon Ryan, of course, and I think a couple of them walked because it was held in the city centre. I think the meeting went on for 2.5 hours. They were briefed and all what was going on. Obviously, Tony Houlihan was given across the position in terms of NPHET. Paul Reid was representing the hospitals and in terms of how they're leaning, and obviously the government were listening. From that meeting, there was a holding statement released to the press, and obviously that made all the national headlines. But there was no leadership shown. There was a lack of government leadership. There was a lack of appearance of the Taoiseach or the Taoiseach or any minister or anybody who was supposed to be leading this response. And the fact that the letter was communicated on Thursday evening, was handed in Friday morning. I appreciate the Taoiseach was away on Thursday, but there's no reason. The Taoiseach was away in America when he addressed the nation, if you remember correctly. The cabinet probably could have met yesterday and Saturday. They could have drawn up a plan of action within the living with COVID guidelines that we already have, and we could have known where we sat on Saturday evening, rather than going in now, as it looks and as it's been muted, that the cabinet will meet on Monday. Then any agreements will be fleshed out. We will probably then have an announcement Monday or Tuesday, and then what we will see is a movement to what they're calling a level 4 plus, which is bizarre because we were going to live with these levels. And now I know Dublin has been living with 3.5. We currently have Donegal, Cavan and Monaghan on a level 4. But it's the lack of leadership, it's the lack of communication, which is really frustrating. Because without communication or effective communication, hysteria, gossip, and fake news fills the void. Now, one thing that I will credit Leo Varadkar with is that he was a good and effective communicator when he needed to be in the previous lockdown. My problem here is that the leadership from each party is going out after these meetings and briefing their own parties in terms of what has been communicated to them from NPHET and other stakeholders. Now, and then they have to communicate this with their party. The party have to then have their own internal conversations, come up with a position, make sure that everybody supports that position, and then when they're asked on the position, how they communicate it effectively. This is too slow in terms of a response to a pandemic and a situation that is, time, very, very much based around time and response in time. We need to have clear leadership, or even a communication on how the leadership is going about communicating this. And this is not what's happening, and that's my problem. And that's, when I nosed into this and got into the detail, that's the issue. A letter that was issued on Friday will not be responded to on a Monday afternoon. This is not a Monday to Friday 9 to 5 pandemic that we're going through. You can't put an out of office on Friday or Thursday afternoon when you're leaving the country to go to Brussels and come back into the office on Monday and then meet your colleagues and say, all right, this is what I've heard over the weekend, this is what I've been doing. Now, I appreciate there's a lot of cogs in this wheel, and I appreciate that there has to be a balance between the economy, between the National Health Service, between other stakeholders, and we have to weigh them up, and we can't go back into a full down lockdown without thinking of the ramifications, and we might need to get our ducks in a row, and I appreciate that. But at the same time, there should be leadership, there should be communication to the people. Without that, we have been going over the whole weekend in a negative position where we pretty much know what's coming. I've spoken to people in the streets, I've spoken to people in the shops. I know what they're thinking. They're saying this is inevitable, we're going to level 5. If we don't do it now, we'll do it in a week's time. What will we lose? What will we lose? And it's not a case of saving Christmas, it's not a case of saving Halloween, it's not a case of any of this. It's a case of doing what is right in terms of the country on a balanced level. Now, at this stage, we haven't been active enough in terms of our own personal responsibility as people. There's still too many people congregating, there's too many people getting together in houses, and there's too many people flaunting the rules. This needs to stop. We need to take personal responsibility. We need to reduce the amount of people that we're in contact with on a social level. Whatever about going to the shops and going to work, these all need to be done. But what we need to do is not have people over to our houses, not go out and meet people for dinner, not go out and meet people for coffee. Because that's just how it spreads. People are the spreaders. And in terms of the government, they need to lead by example. They need to have a plan of communications. Whether it's Micheál Martin, whether it's Pascal Donoghue, whether it's Leo Varadkar, someone needs to come out when we know that an NPHET is meeting the government, and we need to know what they're saying. We need to know what the plan of action is. They need to understand. Even if it's just a holding statement, someone needs to be front and centre and not hide behind a statement. A statement is like sending an email when you know you need to make a phone call. And that's what we need. Especially now coming into the winter time when it's dark, it's dreary, and people aren't in good spirits as a nation. We never are in good spirits as a nation. We look forward to Christmas, but this is going to be taken away from us. So as a nation, we need leadership, we need communication, we need to understand where we're going. And that's what made the headlines this week. As ever, COVID-19 restrictions, NPHET and Level 5. With this in mind, and Level 5 in mind, I want to reintroduce, as I said at the start of this podcast, my very special guest, the girl in hospitality. Her name is Fernanda, and earlier we spoke about restrictions in the hospitality sector, how the last 7 months have affected the hospitality industry, and what the hospitality industry might look like going into the future. I hope you enjoy the podcast and listen in and go and follow Fernanda, the girl in hospitality, on Instagram. Today I am joined by Fernanda, known to me as the girl in hospitality originally. How are you, Fernanda?
Hi, Piers. Thank you so much for having me today. Really, really excited and really was looking forward to this talk with you. Thank you so much.
No, I appreciate you giving over your time. I know you're busy. You're working away in the hospitality background. Really, I came across you in terms of Instagram. I came across how you were presenting information in regards to COVID, doing reviews of different hospitality sites that you had visited, and I just thought the way you presented everything was wonderful. And as a graduate of hospitality myself, I thought you were doing great work and promoting what people were doing well. So maybe it's an opportunity for you just to kind of give your background in terms of your own hospitality experience, where you've come from, and what you've done in the last little while and where you've got to now.
Yeah, so I actually came to Ireland. I'm from Brazil originally, and I came to Ireland 5 years and a half ago. So for 2 years I was as a student, so working part-time. So at the moment, the only job I was able to get was a part-time job. So the first opportunity that I had was to work as a waitress in a 4-star hotel in Dublin city centre. And so then I was there for pretty much those 2 years. So I started as a floor staff, learning how to actually carry a tray, and slowly progressed.
Dropping stuff, then you learn how to do a balance,
Guinness on gas on the way, so it was a great learning. But then I started actually getting really interested by the bar side, and like cocktails and drinks and beers and whiskies and all of that. So I started slowly developing a passion for it. My boss at the time realized that, and he was actually starting putting me more and more behind the bar, and I started loving it. So I went back to Brazil, got my European citizenship, came back to Ireland to then stay for good. And then when I came back, I started working in another 4-star hotel in city centre, and then started as a bartender already, and then I developed myself from bartender, senior to duty manager, then to meetings and events assistant manager, and then later as a bar and restaurant manager. So it was great, all this progression, and actually be able to go back to the initial department as a manager. So it was so much learning and growth.
And a lot of hard work, I'd say, as well. It sounds like...
Oh, yeah. Long hours and shifts and late shifts and oh my god, you know
Yeah,
all of that for
finishing at
sure.
2 o'clock in the morning, then
Um,
coming back to work for eight
oh
o'clock
yeah,
in the morning.
totally.
It's a
Yes,
real
and it
commitment.
weddings as well. So they were like weddings finishing at 1:30, and then cleaning everything and resetting for the next day for another wedding. So like, but look, I learned so much, and I'm just so grateful for that experience. And then for the past 8 months, I've been working there. Then I moved to sales and marketing department because I have a background in marketing and communication. So in Brazil, I worked for 5 years for a multinational company, an IT company
Yeah,
in Brazil. With marketing, I have my degree in journalism. I got my postgraduate diploma here in digital marketing. So it's pretty much like all these steps to get where
yeah,
I am today. But for sure, having this perspective from operations, it makes so much difference in my daily work nowadays, especially like when inquiries and actually helping from my side whatever I need to support
yeah.
the operations
And I,
team.
and I think in terms of bringing then in how I came across you in terms of Instagram and the girl in hospitality, I think it's you brought the best of your education and background in terms of the journalism and marketing side, and then promoting and you presenting in such a clear and a nice way the venues that you were in. So where did this idea for the girl in hospitality come from?
So it came. It's actually during lockdown. I think it was maybe for 2 months at home because, of course, the hotel closed and I was laid off with all the rest of the staff. Um, and I was at home, and I was actually. I remember that it was on the week that the hotels could reopen. So it was the 29th of June. Um, and I was like, okay, but I'm so afraid of actually going out because I don't know how the hotels or restaurants or bars are actually following the guidelines. So I said,
Yeah,
but I need to go there and see for myself. And I couldn't find any sort of like content on like on Instagram or Facebook or whatever about that. And like, look, I actually been there. They're following all the guidelines because it was everything so uncertain
yeah,
for the businesses as well. How to behave, how to deal with the guests, how to deal with all these new clean lists, standards, and everything. That I'm like, okay, I need to go there and check for myself. And then when I went there and said, oh, you know what, it's actually it's being actually great. So I think I felt the need to share that
yeah. I
with my colleagues.
communicated, yeah. And I
Yes,
think for me as a viewer of your content, and I was in the same boat. I was, wasn't sure what the standard operating procedures were in terms of different places and
mm-hmm.
everybody's interpretation, I think, of the guidelines that were given out were, kind of in a grey area. But I think with the way you explained it, especially in the hospitality and hotel kind of way, was that, this is what's happening, this is what it means, this is how people are,
Yeah,
going about it, and this is how they're making it safe for us. And then it's easier for people to understand it. And the fact that you couldn't really see anything on Instagram, and all of us use Instagram to find out stuff, that the way you communicated it, I think it was quite clear, quite direct, and all credit to you for doing that. It was quite
I'll
brilliant.
take my years. Try to be I try to look for both sides. So as a customer going there, want to feel safe, but
Yeah,
also as a business, and if a business owner is like, I actually want to know what the other people are doing because they might have a nice idea that I can implement in my business and make whatever operations better and work smoother. So that's why I started then the girl in hospitality, and I'm just loving it. I'm
yeah.
just loving it. Of
No,
course, going out having a drink and a nice bite is not being really bad as well. So
no, it has its perks, I suppose. You might as well, go out and enjoy
yeah,
yourself and have a reason to go out. Oh, it's research, totally, totally, definitely research
exactly.
all the time.
All, all for their work, of
Absolutely.
course.
I, I suppose looking at the situation we are now in terms of we're 7 months into the global pandemic in Ireland, and this time of the year, hotels, restaurants would be planning for maybe the Christmas period, or getting the ball rolling on the Christmas period, I suppose. In terms of yourself and the company you're working with, what would traditionally this time of the year mean for you and for the industry, I suppose?
We are planning. in the hotel that I work, we're planning already all the Christmas packages and everything, but it's just so uncertain. We don't know what's going to happen. So we kind of like plan, and I think it's everybody on the same boat. Whoever is to open, we're trying to get our business there now, trying to plan something for the end of the year for our guests, but we don't know if we're going to be open
Yeah, and this is
at
the
all.
yeah this is the problem, because traditionally this time of the year you would have a lot of award ceremonies in hotels. A lot of
Oh yeah,
large companies would be planning, their corporate nights, and there'd be, a
right.
lot of
Party.
wine, a lot of nice food, a lot of get together. So all that business is gone from the hospitality sector, I suppose.
Yeah,
In Dublin, you'd
yeah.
have people coming in from other cities for city breaks, and we'd be going over to city
Mm-hmm,
breaks, and then you'd have it
mm-hmm.
traditionally the Christmas party. So as you said, this time of the year you'd normally be getting your 2 weeks annual leave. You'd be going off, taking a break, and trying to g yourself up for the next 3 months of hard work and late nights, I
Oh
suppose.
yeah, yeah. That would be full on November, December, January, all the Christmas parties, and then in January and February, then would be hotels and restaurants and bars Christmas parties, because it's when then we don't get
Yeah.
busy, and then we get have then we host their dinners and parties and celebrations. So it is a good
Yeah, and that normally brings
three
you,
4 months.
yeah, it brings you then into kind of your Patrick's Day season, and then the start of the season all over again with the American tourists coming in, and it all starts over
Yeah,
again. So yeah, normally this time of the year, I think hospitality would be looking after the Christmas parties and then looking after each other. I suppose with lockdown and with all the uncertainty, I suppose it's all up in the air. And if level 5 comes in, it's shut down again, I suppose. If you look back on the last 7 months, and I know you were on layoff for a period of time, but in terms of the industry and hospitality industry, what do you think some of the biggest challenges have been for the industry?
oh, for the industry, for sure, it's just keeping the doors open. It's not sustainable at all. I know so many hotels that they had to close the doors because it, you need to have a limit. There's a already reduced capacity, so we're already working on a reduced capacity, and then now, um, just can serve residents, for example. So people are just so afraid of booking, and especially being in Dublin, that for so many weeks in a row, Dublin was put on a spotlight of being the worst centre
The
of
most dangerous
impact.
centre in Ireland, yeah.
Yeah, so it's been such a big challenge for to actually say no. Look, we have the standards in place, we have the guidelines, we're following the protocols, we have all this health and safety standards here in house. All our staff members are wearing face masks. All we have hand sanitizer in the whole hotel. Like all these small things, and we, of course, need to keep proving ourselves to the customers for them to think and consider to book to stay with us. But in the same time, they're all those families. They have the people in their families that is maybe part of group of risk, and they don't want to, take a risk.
No, and no
Honestly,
one wants to bring it home to
it's
their family.
so, yes, it's just so many factors that is working against the hospitality industry at the moment, and going to level 4 for sure is not going to help at all. And of course, there is this. I've been seeing so many staycation deals going
Yeah,
on at the moment. But of course, the staycation they're going to happen on the weekends. So during the week, there's like 10 rooms max on the
yeah,
hotels, and then it gets really busy on the weekend. But then you can't hire staff members just to work on the weekends. You need to have them back because it's not fair with them, because they need to then reapply for the COVID um, support from the government. And so we work, I believe everybody who's still opened is working a really, really, really limited
yeah.
staff.
And I think from a government point of view and maybe a lobbying group point of view, I don't think they really understand in terms of it's great to have brought out this tax rebate in terms of giving you money back if you spend in the
Out and
hospitality
spend.
sector, but it wasn't communicated as clearly as it should have been. It
No,
wasn't as simple as it needed to be. It actually came across as a lot of hard work to get a very little amount back. And I think in terms
yeah,
of trying to drive sales and trying to drive, levels of staycations in a period when, you know, if people were working, generally they'd be working Monday to Friday and they would be off the weekend. There was an opportunity there for people who were on layoff, who were still getting the COVID money, still had a little bit of savings and wanted to get away, that they could have, enhanced maybe the payback and made it a little bit simpler if you were going on a midweek break, so that way, the business was kind of sustained during the weekdays and also had their, business towards the end of it.
Yeah, yeah. The idea of this scheme is like it's really good,
Yeah.
and of course it's coming with on the flow of the one that just finished in the UK. That's pretty much the same idea. Um, However, I think here it's exactly what you said. People are going on these vacations. They are going with their family and with their kids, and it's so they're like the cost of the room, the cost of the food, the cost of, and then the drink. Like you can't, of course, you can't purchase alcoholic beverage without food,
Yeah.
and which is understandable. And then also in this scheme, you cannot claim ta- any tax back,
On the
any money
alcohol,
back.
yeah.
Um, so there's just all of those little things that I think is just more trouble for the customer
Yeah, they
to
want it
go there
easy.
like, okay, yeah, no, it should be simpler.
Looking towards the future, maybe hopefully using our crystal ball and seeing the end of this COVID restriction, how do you
Mm.
think the pandemic will affect the future of hospitality? Because our industry is very much about customer focused, front and center, engagement with customers, being very hospitable, being friendly, sometimes getting quite close to the guests and having a laugh, a joke, and trying to be quite intimate with them. How do you think what we've learned, how we've developed, how we've adapted, I suppose, in the last 7 months will affect the future of the hospitality industry?
Of course, the, the main beginning was exactly that, like what you said about the customer service within the hospitality industry was so much about you spending a little bit of time and attention, giving a little bit of extra attention to a guest, and like really empathizing with like when an issue they're going through, like with a complaint or something, that you could actually use of that proximity
Yeah.
with the guest uh, to and even show your actually face
Yeah.
to them and being smiley, friendly, and welcoming. And in the beginning, it's of all of that, you couldn't see the staff member's face.
Yeah.
So it was already such a hostile situation of like, oh my god, I don't know if this staff member is being nice to me, if they're being like a little bit grumpy or something. So we had to overcome that.
Yeah.
For so use from other kind of tools and show the guests that no, we're actually here, we're going to keep looking after you as we were before, and we're doing our absolute best to make your experience as great and amazing as it was before COVID.
Yeah.
And I think is a little bit of the little touches now, the little bit of like little note in their bedrooms, a little chocolate, a little complimentary treat for them, it just to show that we care.
Yeah.
That they're not there just as a number and just getting revenue.
Yeah, exactly. I
To
think it's about adapting to a different way of communicating to our guests, I suppose,
yeah,
in our hospitality, that we're still here. While it might feel like you're coming into a doctor's waiting room when you're checking in,
yeah,
we are still here. We're still
yeah,
happy to see you. And
yeah.
I think going forward, I think we will. I would think going forward we will all have hand sanitizers everywhere. Still, we will still
Oh
probably.
yeah,
Yeah.
I think for there's so many things we had to learn that it's going to be so difficult for just kind of like, oh yeah, the COVID's gone now, we don't need to, like, I don't think it's going to be that at all, because people will get used to feeling that safe
Yeah.
staying in a hotel. So even or you stay in a hotel or going to a restaurant or seeing like everything deeply sanitized, like transports and like going in a plane to go to somewhere else, to another country, and you enter in the places and in planes and in cars. and in restaurants and bars, and you feel safe to be there, and you know that it was cleaned, you know it was sanitized, and you know that it's okay to be here. I think that feeling is not going to go away that
No,
quick.
it's gonna be a long time.
So yeah, for sure, it's gonna be a legacy now. It's gonna be
Absolutely, yeah.
yeah, for many many more months to come until like we actually start to relax again.
And get a
But it will
vaccine,
take a
maybe.
while.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
I suppose that's kind of what we are in terms of our industry and in terms of hospitality and dining and hotel stays and travel. I suppose on a personal level, outside of hospitality, as a person dealing with this, I know for myself it's been a difficult time to adapt to the isolation from my friends and my wider family, and it's been hard. But I've learned stuff about myself, and I've learned to queue. I was never able to queue for anything. Now I can kind of just about spend 10 minutes or 15 minutes in a queue. So I've learned the patience side of things. But in terms of yourself, have you learned anything about yourself that you said, oh, maybe I wouldn't have learned that if we hadn't been in this situation?
Oh look, one thing that for sure I'm taking that to the rest of my life is that we shouldn't worry and waste our energy with things that we cannot control, because there are things outside of our power. So all like we go into level 4, we go into level 5, we don't go to lockdown. It is above it's beyond us,
Yeah.
or in our power. So if it has, we're going to do our part as citizens, as business owners, of following the guidelines and doing our absolute best to follow everything, take care of our guests. That's it. That's what we can do. But really stress about it and lose, of course, look, not undermining like any responsibilities from business owners, and that they have the responsibility with other people's job, that I can't even imagine how hard it was for all of them to lay off and then like make redundant all those jobs, and these people that was working in hospitality for so long and had to go through that. I can't imagine how hard it was for them. But in the same time, if it's needed to, it is the business. If the business had to close, how you're going to keep paying staff members if you're not getting money at all? And
Yeah.
business had to actually. So, but all about this news, and I've been seeing so many people just, oh my God, I've been looking at the news every time. Oh my God, I'm accessing the updating the page.
Yeah.
The news that you see now, it's going to be there in like 10 minutes. So kind of like just do not overstress that it will happen. What needs to happen?
I think I think that's an important point. Like, it's not going away anytime soon. There's no point in refreshing what you're seeing on your news feeds. There's no point in buying the newspaper. There's no new news in the newspaper. Maybe, look at the news once a day, and that's all you probably need to do. But yeah, I think that's an important thing. Don't stress about stuff that you can't control. I think you've really hit the nail on the head. And for myself, I think being able to queue for 10 minutes in the shops is a really really good feat for me on a personal level. Fernando, I think that's everything for myself. I think that's been a really good insight into yourself, the girl in hospitality, which is available on Instagram. I would recommend all my listeners to go and check you out and give you a follow. The way you communicate, the way you present all the information that you do, and how simple it is to understand is really refreshing, and something that other people could use as a template going forward. I wish you the very best in work, and I hope that you continue working and that you're safe and well. I appreciate your time.
Thank you so much, David, and it's great to talk to you, get your insights on everything. I follow your page for like a while already, and I always have so much fun with your videos and with your stories. I'm always have a great laugh. Yeah. So thank you very much for inviting me to be here today. Really,
you're very welcome. That was the conversation I had with Fernanda, the girl in hospitality, during the week in regards to the hospitality sector and all things COVID. Looking back on the week, the three headlines that stuck out for me were the government restrictions on level 5 and their incorporation of NPHET and lack of communication, the going missing of Fungi and the possibility that maybe Fungi is more than one bottlenose dolphin, and of course Pascal Donoghue and Michael McGrath's first budget together for 2021 and the amount of money they were going to spend. I'd recommend you go and follow the Girl in Hospitality on Instagram and listen back in next week where we'll review whatever is going to happen in the next 7 days. Find me on Acast or wherever you find your normal podcasts. Thanks for listening and stay safe. Bye bye.